Welcome back to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah, and we're back. It's been, again, I feel like this is kind of the last time. I was looking over our last episode, and it started very similarly. I think, the last couple months of life have been, last time I described it as shattering. This time I don't even have a word really right now, so it doesn't matter to describe it. But um, welcome if you're new to the podcast. Hannah and I just pretty much, I've been thinking about this. We kind of have like an open book club, you and I,
Yeah.
about the Gene Keys and life and whatever like comes up, and how we resonate, or just kind of our reflections. And that was really the purpose of creating this space, was to just have the opportunity to explore the human experience, with the Gene Keys kind of being that guide that
Yeah.
we use as the roadmap for this creative process. So welcome if you're new, and if you've listened, then happy to have you back. This week we're on Gene Key 30, which neither Hannah nor I have it defined, but both of our partners do. Her husband does, my boyfriend does, and it's part of their incarnation cross. And Hannah and I were kind of just now catching up and reflecting how like it didn't really stick with us in any grand way. And um yeah, I mean, I don't know what we're gonna say about it.
Yeah. Like there were definitely parts that kind of resonated and I was like, yeah, I can see that. But I mean, the only thing that really stood out to me is this idea he talks about in the shadow frequency of like humans needing to try everything as part of like consciousness evolving. Did you kind of get that? Like,
I took it as, so um the Gene Key is the gift of lightness, the shadow of desire, and the city of rapture. And what I kind of like, what you're referring to, what I took from it was that the shadow of desire sort of is like this loop, like you have the desire, but you need to like go to the desire, but we've taught not to go to our desires. Um, but to your point, it was more so that the reactive expression of this is flippant. And he kind of
mm,
describes it as like needing to exhaust all of the
yeah.
desires that come up. And then like the repressed of being over serious, which I feel like I can see that more in myself than the reactive.
Yeah, he talks about this idea of like making mistakes, desire being about like making mistakes. And I highlighted here the real purpose of desire is to get human beings to make mistakes so that we can evolve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here
What did
we go.
I?
Hang on, there's another text. All possible connections must be tried and tested in order to discover which are of the greatest service to the totality. Yeah, so he talked about like the desire of, like he talked about like all these different desires that human beings can have, and the desire for something like positive, let's say, could be as strong as the desire to like kill someone on the other
Yes.
extreme,
Yeah.
so this is where we see like terrorism and war and all of these different things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, you know, it's that part of like having to go through the experiences to learn the mistakes, to see kind of um our process and what works and what doesn't. I do feel like I can see that in my own life, of just going through with something like yesterday. I've been noticing that um like I'll have a desire for particular types of substances, and that being like that of caffeine or even alcohol. And I noticed like I've gone through like a lot physically in the last 2 months or so. So my body is changing in a way that is very interesting. And my like responses to things are quite different than they have been using or taking the same things or whatever. Um, but I noticed that like yesterday, or even the time before that, my point is that like I do like alcohol from time to time. And so I'll give into that desire. And now I'm sort of noticing that like there's such a different experience of it. And I wouldn't say it's like a mistake. For me, it's just more data to like obtain to make different decisions in my life towards the things that I desire or want. And it's interesting because my authority is
Mm.
listening to my heart's desires. So it's just being very I think when it's sort of related to this gene key of being able to discern of like what is my heart's true desire and what is just a like egoic sort of longing for something or a real wanting.
Or a momentary
Yeah, and
pleasure.
sitting with it, right. And that process of really just
Yeah.
yeah, say that last part you cut out.
Oh, I've thought about that a lot too, as it relates to because I have the same ego authority as you. And I also have thought about it in terms of motivation in the variables in
Mhm.
human. I have a innocent motivation. And so the opposite, what do they call it? When it's like in its not self, innocent motivation is desire.
I don't know what I want to say transference, but I don't think that that's the right.
Transference, that's
It
the
is
word.
transference. Okay.
Yeah, that's the word. So essentially, with an innocent motivation, you're not actually supposed to be motivated by your desires. And I remember asking a coach about this once, and the way she explained it to me was like when it comes to things that kind of drive you and motivate you into action, it's not supposed to be pursuing like a desire, but when you're faced with options in front of you, it's like, well, what do I really want? And that's how you make your decisions. And that's the following the heart's desires of the authority.
Mm.
And so it really is, I think, a process of and such a personal process of like sitting with yourself. And I guess this is the whole point of human design is, we each have our own unique way of making decisions. We each have our own process for, trial and error, making mistakes, learning about ourselves, like all the different elements that can come into play. And, I've been thinking more about like, okay, so for heart's desires,
Mhm.
is this momentary decision leading me towards where my heart really wants me to go? Or is this just something that would feel good in the moment?
Mm.
Mm.
So I've been kind of practicing because again, our strategies are also informing.
Mm.
So I've been practicing um like talking out the want or the desire, not necessarily informing, but using the power of my voice to process through what I really want. Because sometimes I just like am unsure of like, I know I want something, but I don't know what the want is. And today I was like, I tried this out. I was like, oh, okay, because I needed to get the directions to the place that I was thinking I wanted to go. It was like the smoothie place, and they also they sell uh like retail items of like different wellness supplements and things like that, whatever. So I wanted to see if they had any matcha in this place. And I was like, well, do I want an acai bowl? Do I want to get like an actual matcha from there? Do I just want to buy this? Like, so I was like, I would kind of talk that out. And I was like, okay, let me just go there and
Mm.
I will kind of feel out what I really want when I'm there. And I did. So I just went there because I think I get in the habit of like, when I have that in the moment want, um,
Mm.
I will be like, okay, well, if I want this now, how will this like then impact my decisions and my planning of the rest of the day? Like it just gets like really like mental. And
Mm.
so I was just like, okay, like what's the in my I was like, what's the worst that's gonna happen if I just go there? Nothing.
Mm.
Like, let me just go there and then figure it out once I get there. It was like I was trying to make the decision of what I wanted, like when I wasn't even there. And so I just kind of like,
And like you said, it sounds mental, like it's not, and that's not how the authority is supposed to be used, like
right.
becoming yeah.
Right. And so I went and I asked my question to the lady of like if that was the only brand they had for the matcha. And she's like, yeah. And I kind of like looked around and I was like, well, I don't really want any of this right now. And what I actually wanted was a coffee. So I made that decision. Um, I went and I wanted the coffee. And so I came home, like gathered my things, and we went to the coffee shop, a new one that I hadn't tried, and it was like a great time. And my day
Mm.
has just been like full of a lot of flow and ease, I would say. And that's what I'm really excited for when it comes to like where I'm at right now, being I feel like I'm sort of like on the downward of what was a couple of months of like intensity, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, spiritually,
Mm.
like in all realms. And so being in where I'm at right now, I'm really excited to like re-experiment with all of the different facets of my human design.
Yeah, like you feel like you're in a good place now.
Yeah, yeah, like I can actually like I feel like I have the space to
Yeah.
like get back into the flow of experimenting, of taking in um the gene keys and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel?
I feel, well, like I shared with you earlier, I'm still coming off the back of like a hangover from yesterday
Yeah.
to making some poor decisions, some mistakes. Not really, I was having fun. Like
Yeah.
so my husband and I went to a charity event on the weekend a couple of days ago, and we drank way more than we normally would. Normally we don't even really drink much, but if we do, we might have a couple of glasses of wine. But it was like free flowing drinks all night, and floor, and there was a band, and like we had a great time. But then the next day, we both woke up and were like, this is why we stopped drinking. Like this
Mhm.
is the feeling after. And so this kind of did actually was a question that I kind of sat with before we got on this call, is like what I really want and what I've wanted for a long time is to just feel good and to feel healthy and to feel vibrant. And I suppose these are like, if we're going back to that like authority question,
Mhm.
like, yeah, maybe in the moment I might be like, oh yeah, I want a glass of champagne, or I want to indulge in this. And also there's nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
like if it's, going to the extent that then I'm going to like not feel good the next day and then the day after, and it's like flowing into my week and going to set me back, it's actually really not what I want. It
Mhm.
is just that kind of momentary desire. And what hit me before was, we're talking about the solar plexus here, like it's emotional,
Yeah.
and it's not the same as a heart's desire, because the heart's desire lives in the heart center. And so it is a different energy. And I suppose that's like, and also for you and I having, both of us having this as an open gate and having the solar plexus as an open center in the chart, this is an area of real conditioning for us and an area for us to like learn, I suppose, the wisdom that these gates and this energy can teach us. So
Mm.
yeah, that just kind of, I don't know. I don't really know what that
Well,
brings
what
up.
came to me, yeah, well, what came to me was kind of like, what a great question for anybody who has an ego authority, who's an ego authority and an open emotional center or an open solar plex center.
It would be, if you have ego authority, you would have an an open solar plexus, because that's, otherwise you'd be emotional authority.
Right. Okay. Had a little technical difficulty for a second, but so yeah, so I guess it's interesting to kind of just notice that, like, notice kind of like what is coming through in the sense of like sometimes like what center, like what voice of what center is like popping up. Um, because back to how I was kind of working through that decision making, and I always like to, like my, um, it's like my smaller daily decision makings that sometimes feel more confusing or like unclear than like bigger ones, right? I feel like I had a really strong urge that came through, and the decision process of that was so clear in moving to San Diego. And like everything was just clear. Like the dreams were clear. What happened the day after those two dreams were clear. Um, and then making that decision was just like fully heart in it. Like, let's do
Yeah.
it. Right. And then it's like the smaller things of like, well, what do I want to do today? Or what do I want to eat? Or, um, like those are like like what am I interested in today, or whatever, like those are the smaller things that I really think that this like where I'm at right now is calling me to be just more I don't know if I want to say like deliberate or like just more intentional,
Intentional. Yeah.
yeah, with this process, because yeah, am I making a decision based off like an emotional feeling, or am I truly making a decision that's like will centered? And I heard
Mm,
someone actually, I listened to a podcast that Erin Jones Claire, or I can't remember her name, but she's
yeah.
big in human design, was describing the ego authority of like really having your will like in that
Mhm.
decision, right? And I didn't think about it like that for a while. I really was kind of framing it as like, what is my heart desire? But it really is the will center. The ego
Yeah.
center is also known as the will center. And so it's like, for me, what is my heart fully in the sense that I have like the motivation, the drive, the will to do,
Mm.
and not necessarily, like you said, making a decision off of a momentary wanting or
Does
pleasure, desire,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And like emotions are inconsistent and up and down and change day to day. And like you and I can't really understand what an emotional authority would feel like. And they do say that you need time to kind of let the ride out the wave of the
Hmm.
emotion until you're
Hmm.
clear to make that decision. But yeah, like I think with the heart center, sometimes it can feel a lot more quicker. And sometimes with big decisions, you do need to sit with it for a while, like the decision to move interstate or whatever. But yeah, I find even with Alex being an emotional manifester, he, like when we moved to the country where we live now from the city, for me, I was like, I knew that my heart wasn't in living in the city anymore. So I
Yeah.
was like, I don't have the will to keep living here and keep doing this kind of lifestyle that we're doing. And I knew that like I had that desire to have space, to live a slower life, like all of the things that we wanted for this lifestyle here. But it took him a lot longer to come to that decision. And I had to be really patient, which I find difficult, to
Mhm.
let him go through his process
Mhm.
of, sitting with the emotional wave of that decision. And luckily we kind of both came to the decision in the end. But another question I wanted to ask you, or even just like I suppose, statement to put out there, is about like, while we're on the topic of trusting our decisions and our authority, like I think in human design, there's this kind of narrative that as soon as you start living your design, life will just all of a sudden flow,
Mhm.
and things will all of a sudden just start working out for you, and you'll become successful and you'll get all these things that you want, and
Mhm.
things will just start to manifest in your life. And I just think that that's really not true. And I think that that's something that I guess I wanted to say, is that like I've had a lot of decisions that have come from a heart place, but haven't panned out the way that I thought they should mentally, or the way that I wanted to. And then like, I can't know though. This is why we almost have to like remove ourselves and our ego from these decisions and, where life is taking us. I can't see the bigger picture right now. We can't see immediately why things play out.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, I suppose I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that, and like also just pose that statement that, maybe things won't pan out the way you think they will when you start to live according to your design. But certainly, I definitely feel more aligned with who I really am
Mhm.
since learning about my human design. But mentally, if I look around at my life, I'm like, oh gosh, it's not how I thought it would look
Yeah.
after making these decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just want to comment on the last part you said, because like, again, we're not meant to like, I mean, for me, I'm not meant to be in a place where like the mental is the driver, right? Or the truth of like what's happening, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I once heard a while ago, or oh, I don't know where it was, but I know that I heard this like statement of sometimes your decisions aren't going to lead you to the thing that you like want. And
Mm.
that is not for us to know. It's like the greater cosmic plan, so to speak, or God's planning, or the universal process of life, like, is not really for us to know. And so sometimes there's a force greater that it's like propelling you to make a decision, and it seems like the correct one, but it's not necessarily going to lead to like the most magical thing that's going to happen, right? Or that you think is going to happen. And I say that because like this is something I've actually recently, um in retrospect, have like a little bit more clarity on, is that when like I said just a little bit ago, like that urge to follow through on this decision and make this big change in my life, after the adventure, like maybe even that gate of 35, when that like fell off, um, I was questioning a lot. And for a long time, as and I've been in some deep places with where my life has unfolded after making such a like aligned decision, right? And a lot of doubting, a lot of questioning, a lot of just like not being clear on like what's happening. And I was in a therapy session recently where a lot of this started to come up, and of like me trying to like know now like what the plan is going to be after I made this big decision and all these things have happened. And I've just come to recognize that like sometimes life puts you on a trajectory to do something so that you know, like you have more clarity around the contrast. It just and sometimes it's not like you're not gonna like the other end of it, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it wasn't purposeful and then it's not useful. And it's really not until like you're on the other end of something sometimes that you have that ability to see that. And so like if anybody's in a moment where they've gotten into human design or just making a decision with their life with or without human design, and honoring different parts of themselves, and it's feeling this way of like, oh, I'm not getting the thing then that I thought I was going to get, like that's okay too. Like maybe you're supposed to be in that experience to gather more data, I call it data information, um for the next decision or moment.
Yeah, exactly, which is what I think he was referring to about like needing to make mistakes in order to
Yes.
evolve and like when I think about how that relates to like what I've just kind of been through over the weekend with like indulging in those kind of momentary pleasures,
Mm-hmm.
desires, and then how that makes me feel afterwards. Like this is so much of my journey is about like learning to love myself and love my body. And sometimes you have to go to the depths of like the opposite of that in
Yeah.
order to learn that lesson. And I think that I've really come to this place where I'm like, I'm just so sick of not feeling good in my body. And like, I now I know because I've been there like through for so many years. And it's like sometimes we just have to go through it to learn and
Yes.
to like really learn, you
And well,
know,
that's
and
what he says. And it's something I wanted to actually bring up. And that's why I was like, I kept looking through the pages for a second. It was like, so he says, the real hunger coming from the 30th shadow is the hunger for experience itself. In order for human beings to master their environment, they have to taste all aspects of it, which means that they also have to explore the darker side of experience as well as the lighter, which pretty much sums up like everything I just shared and what you just talked about.
yeah, and that is what hit me in that moment of reading that was like, oh, this is what I've kind of known is like, why can't I just find this like love for my physical vessel, you know, that I know mentally if I'm looking at like my human design chart and everyone's telling me like, oh, you're supposed to love your body. And it's like, oh, okay, I've had to learn what it looks like to not love my body and not, you know, nurture it and take care of it and,
Mhm.
you know the opposite of what doesn't feel good in order to know what does feel good.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was wondering if there's anything that like you recognize in Alex or anybody else you know that actually has this defined.
Mm. Um, I don't know. I notice like often when it comes to things like and I know this is not so much about like material things, but like he's a lot quicker to be like, "Oh, I need that. I want that." Kind of in terms of, you know, like I'll just look for it on Amazon. I'll just buy this on Amazon or like, you know, these quick
Yeah.
kind of things and I'm often a bit more like able to sit back and be like, "Oh, I don't think we really need that." And you know, so I feel like I don't get kind of swept up in those like quick quick wants and desires as much. But yeah, I don't know. What about Travis?
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm only laughing because that it's the same dynamic over here too.
Yeah.
Um, but so I feel like sometimes there's a couple different systems that we're looking at this through, like the gene keys is sometimes almost, it's very intertwined with human design and it's part of human design, but it's also different. You know what I'm saying? And so like I was reading what the gift of this is in the more human design lens of it being located in the solar plexus and it being related to feelings and like being a person who can deeply feel and connect. And they're here sort of to show this to the rest of us. If you have this like defined, like this is the gift of
Yeah.
being able to experience and feel life so deeply and connect. And I it's funny because we were actually having a discussion just before you and I got on here around um how he experiences his emotions in relation to like desires and um pleasures and indulgences and how those two correlate with his feelings. And I would say like he's actually a very emotional person. No, let me say that. Like he can feel things just as deeply as I can. And I think that's just because he also has an open emotional center. Um, and his own life experiences, whatever. But I have found to like witness it is very interesting.
So he has an open emotional, does he?
Mhm.
So what's his authority?
Ego. Travis
He's also
chart
an ego manifester.
hit Travis's chart and my chart are like very, very similar.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because Alex and mine are very different.
Yes, you guys
But
are
we're
the
both,
like, you guys kind of
yeah,
like match each other's, and ours are like almost identical.
overlap.
They,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have some areas where we create channels and stuff, but it's and more lately, I'm just like, he is such a mirror to my experience because when I experience the things I like and the things I don't like, I'm like, wow, that's me
Mm.
in many ways. And you don't have to have similar charts to experience that. Let me just say, like anybody out there, our relationships can be great mirrors for us. Um, but yeah, when it comes to like this gift of being able to feel and connect deeply, I I see it in him, and I think that that's sort of also why um he's had his own journey on relationships, because he can kind of go to the depths of some things, and wherever he's been in life just hasn't shown him, those relationships necessarily haven't really been there as much. um but yeah, when it comes to like and I was telling him actually before we even, and I was like, hey, you have this one to find, and I like read some stuff to him, and um he for a long time I think goes off of um fulfilling the in either giving in or avoiding the feeling, and kind of making decisions off of that. And it's a learning lesson for him to kind of go through and be more present with. And I don't know who else in my life has the 30th, but yeah, I know he does.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I mean, that's really all I've got for the 30th.
I don't have much more much more to share. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for anybody who's out there who has the 30th, share with Hannah and I how you experience it. And even if you relate to the part of authority, and how that comes into play. Because I think my last bit of this is that societal wise, like we can see the ripple effects of just us as humans making decisions based off of our feelings. And I mean, I see this a lot in working with addictions, right? So I think there's actually a lot more to be said off of the 30th in that regard, but I'll just leave it with that, and some food for thought for our audience and for you guys to think about or even share with us. So thanks for tuning in. I'm so happy to be back and in the rhythm of things, and thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.